Welcome everyone. I hope everyone's having a good week. Today I thought I would do an update video on my Elementalist deck. The one I posted originally when this channel started, it was a bit outdated, mainly because of rulings and also card choices. So I made quite a few edits. For the most part, it's essentially the same deck. Before I start, I wanted to give a shout out to a few people. One being Brandon Bowling. I really appreciate this man so much. He's a great guy in the group chat, and he was able to provide me excellent trades. Actually, he provided me trades for the majority of this deck, so I couldn't be doing this video without him. Thank you again, Brandon. I really appreciate it. I also wanted to thank Kitchen Table TCG for actually using a similar deck list to mine in one of his videos. One of his friends was playing it, and he did an absolute awesome job with playing it. I also like to thank Hayne from Wizard's Den. I love that guy. You gotta check out his channel. He has lots of rulings and lots of statistics for sorcery, and I highly recommend checking out his channel. I also like to thank Mike from Collector's Art House. That guy is awesome. He's been really helping out the game a lot in terms of pushing cards and getting people to get actively into the game. And then lastly, my friends from Cardboard Guide. They're really awesome. Definitely check out their channel. They recently posted videos on curios, and if you all know me, I'm curious about curios all the time. Anyways, let's get on into this deck list. I'd like to present the Elementalist. It's a pretty generic avatar, allowing you to tap to draw and play a site. However, it has a static ability where it will provide you one of each threshold, and this ability essentially is active at all times throughout the game, which is really great. This card essentially just helps you cast your cards fairly easily, and it's not the strongest avatar. However, it is my favorite. It has gorgeous artwork by Elvira Shakirova, and it will forever be my favorite avatar to play with. So going into the spellbook, I'm going to start with the artifacts. We have the Philosopher's Stone. This card gives the bearer, or rather, the first spell of each element cast by the bearer each turn costs one less. They did an excellent job at explaining this card. It makes all your elements cost one less, and having the Elementalist, this is a 4-element deck, so this could potentially grant you 4 mana in some sense, depending on what your hand is. It's a very powerful card. I don't think you can play sorcery without it. Next, we have some mana ramp. We have the Aquamarine Core, Onyx Core, Amethyst Core, and Ruby Core. These are not as great as the Philosopher's Stone, however, they are great cards overall. For 1 mana, it also provides you 1 mana, and it provides you a threshold for its element. And again, this is a 4-element deck list, so we need as much mana fixing as we possibly can have. We have the Immortal Throne as our last artifact. This is a win condition of the deck. Anytime a player plays a card with equal number of level counters on the Immortal Throne, that player will draw a card and the Immortal Throne will get a counter. So for those of you who aren't sure how to get the first counter on, sites are cards with 0 mana. So if you play a site, if a player plays a site while this has no counters, since this has 0 mana cost, this will get its first counter. And then from there on, you're just climbing the stairs. And by the time you get to 8 counters, an avatar here alone wins the game. It's a great card, and it's a wonderful win condition. A lot of people underestimate this card. Your opponent can draw cards from it if they play a corresponding card equal to the number of counters on it, but that's okay. If they give you counters on the Immortal Throne, that's better, because you're using those counters to win you the game. Now we're going into the minions. This is probably one of the biggest edits I made. I used to play 4 Alvalinne Dryads, and for 2 mana and 1 power and toughness, this card's effect provides you 1 mana automatically when it's on the field. And I used to play 4, but I dimmed it down to 2 because it got cloggy in my hand. So instead, I added a Highland Princess. So Highland Princess is same stats, same mana. When it enters play because of Genesis, you get to search your spellbook for an artifact with 1 or less mana. And you can obviously reveal it and add it to your hand. This is really good because the only artifacts in your spellbook are obviously the Philosopher's Stone and the cores. So when she comes in play, she's drawing you more mana. So it's kind of a little slower than the Dryads. However, it can fix your threshold, and if you search for a Philosopher's Stone, it can potentially add more mana to your value. The only other 2 mana cost card that we have is the Grim Reaper. This card is actually insane. So it has lethal, and whenever Grim Reaper kills a minion, you banish that minion in all copies. You search your owner's cemetery, hand, and spellbook, and then banish any copies, and then they shuffle. This is pretty crazy. I found out when facing up against an Enchantress deck, if this kills an aura that was turned into a minion by the Enchantress, this actually gets rid of all the other auras in play because it only just says copies. The copies don't necessarily have to be minions. They don't necessarily have to be auras. Whatever this thing kills, it gets rid of every copy in play, in the hand, cemetery, spellbook, etc. And this can also be really crucial too because you get information on your opponent's cards. Now, it is fairly weak, but there's a card in this deck that actually makes this card ridiculous. But for our 2 drops, we just have these 4 cards. Now, for a budget version, you could play 4 Alvalinne Dryads. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be opposed to it. These cards are just really in there to have little extra utility. For our 3-drop slots, we have the Apprentice Wizard. It's a spellcaster, and whenever it comes in play, it draws you a card. Spellcaster is a very underrated mechanic, and I feel like almost every deck has to have a spellcaster. There are certain spells that activate in certain ranges, so having an extra spellcaster in a different zone allows you to cast cards closer to the targets in which you're trying to get at. I hope that made sense. But everyone knows Apprentice Wizard. It's a really great card. Again, being able to come and play and draw you a spell is like really strong. For our 4 drops, we have 2 Selfsame Simulacrums and 2 Clamor of Harpies. The Selfsame Simulacrum comes in play as a copy of any minion that's nearby. So you can gain value off your Genesis abilities. You can gain value off of copying your opponent's minions. And you can also even copy the Clamor of Harpies, which is a great creature. It has Airborne, and it has Genesis, so it can teleport a weaker minion to the location that Clamor of Harpies is at, and Clamor of Harpies can strike it. Strike doesn't mean fight, so that means that this is the only card that will be dealing damage, and sometimes that's great because, well, actually it's always great, because this is always going to target a weaker minion to it, and then it's going to essentially kill it. Now, I would say the only weakness about this card is that it's not a May ability, so you have to target something weaker than it. So if you're the only person that has a weaker minion than this card, you have to strike it. So play this card very cautiously. It's essentially a removal spell, but having a 3-power flyer is really strong. And of course, Selfsame is just really great, just being able to get extra values off your cards. For our 5 drops, we have 3 Daperyll Vampire. A lot of people have been using this card a little wrong, so I'd like to thoroughly explain this. So this card has 4 power and toughness, and it has Airborne. Any damage dealt by Daperyll Vampire strikes heals you. If you use this to attack your opponent's site, it is not damage. It is loss of life to your opponent's avatar, therefore you will not gain life from the Daperyll Vampire. However, if you use anything else that allows it to strike an enemy unit, or if you were to simply attack an enemy's minion, you'll gain life. Now, you can actually attack the avatar directly, and if it's obviously attacking it personally, then you will gain the life there. It's just whenever it attacks an empty site, you won't gain life. So keep in mind on that. This is a really great card. When you're on Death's Door, you can't gain life. And that's probably another thing that a lot of people didn't know. When you're on Death's Door, you cannot gain life. So you have to try to play this card and gain life before that happens. And that's actually why there's 3 in the deck. If you count the Selfsame Simulacrums, you can technically have more than 3. And that's honestly why the Selfsames are really strong. For our 6-drops, we have 2 Grandmaster Wizard. Grandmaster Wizard is essentially a bigger Apprentice Wizard. Well, bigger in mana, not so big in stats. He has 0 power and toughness. He is a spellcaster. Whenever it comes in play, he draws you cards. He draws you 3 cards, to be specific. Sometimes even more cards than that if you know how to use them right. This is a very strong card. In the mid-game, if you have enough mana ramp and if you play him, he can just get out of hand and actually put you back in the game. And now, these are kinda win conditions. The only reason why I say that is because if you play this while the Immortal Throne is at 7 counters, you win the game. I know it sounds pretty crazy. You won't really get a chance to use it in that scenario, but if the Immortal Throne is destroyed or buried and you need something really strong for the late game, these are very perfect for that. We have Ancient Dragon and Death Dealer. Ancient Dragon is just a beast. It has Airborne, and you can tap it to deal 4 damage to each other unit at target location nearby. So if your opponent has like 3 minions with 3 power or less, you can tap it to essentially eradicate all of them in that one location. It also has 6 power. Being able to attack for 6 is really strong. And having Airborne essentially makes it harder to attack, harder to get rid of, and it allows you to attack in a diagonal formation, making it easier to land strikes. It's also a wonderful artwork. Speaking of awesome artwork, we have Death Dealer here. Enough said about this card. Whenever it comes in play, it kills all other minions. It's really strong. This guy is, once you play it, everything's gone, and with 4 power and toughness, hopefully that'll be enough for you to finish off your opponent as quickly as you can. So that's it for that. And now, lastly, we just have the spells. For our 1-drops, we have Dream Quest, Browse, and Immolation. I'm kind of experimenting with a few of these, but this is the main card you guys need to play. Dream Quest is just crazy. So an allied spellcaster falls asleep and is disabled until it's hurt. At the start of your next turn, if that minion is, or if that spellcaster is still asleep, it wakes up and then you search your spellbook for any card you want. So if you get this on the first turn, you can put your avatar to sleep because all avatars are spellcasters. And as long as your opponent doesn't have like a lightning bolt or anything to deal any damage to it, on your next turn it'll wake up and then you get to search your deck for any card before your draw. This is a really strong card for 1 mana. It's really, really good. This will be the second option if you don't have Dream Quest, is Browse. So you look at the next 7 cards, or your next 7 spells, put one of them into your hand and then the rest on the bottom of your spellbook. The one thing I don't like about it is that it has 3 threshold for air. If you could play this on turn 1, it would be pretty crazy. But you would have to have, like, the only way how you can play this turn 1 is if you have Elementalist, tap to play a air site, and then with that air site's mana, you play an Amethyst Core. So that'll give you the 3 threshold you need and the 1 mana to cast Browse. That's very unrealistic, though. Most of the time, you'll probably play this card mid-game if you're, if you're really lucky. But nevertheless, this is a really good card. Looking at your next 7 cards and picking the 1 card that you absolutely need at that moment could be game-breaking. We have Immolation here. It has 3 threshold for fire. Could be a little hard to cast, but it is 1 mana. This will deal 7 damage to a target minion nearby. So I feel like this can at least kill like 90%, maybe even 95% of the format right now. So for 1 mana, being able to get rid of any minion is pretty good. Now it does say target minion nearby, so if you don't have any nearby minions around your avatar, it becomes, well, a little redundant. However, that's why we play all the other spellcasters, because we can cast them closer to our opponent's minions and then slam them with removal. We'll have better chances of hitting our targets. Speaking of better chances of hitting our targets, we have Lightning Bolt. I play this card at 4. It's just absolutely insane. Dealing 3 damage to a random unit at target location is really good. Sometimes you'll have multiple minions in one spot, so you will have to randomly select that minion in that location. Usually I just roll a dice after declaring which number for the corresponding minion. But this card is really good if they only just have 1 minion in that site. And it's also really good for finishing off the game. If your opponent's on death's door and if their avatar is solely alone on one site, this will deal 3 damage to it, finishing the game. Almost all the time, like, I'm not even joking to you, like 99% of the time, if I have a lightning bolt when my opponent's close to death's door, I'll hold on to it until they're completely at death's door. That way next turn I'm guaranteed to finish off the game. That's, I think, the best way to play lightning bolt. And for its mana and being able to deal 3 damage, it'll hit a good amount of minions and do its job as a good removal spell. Alright, Grapple Shot. So I underestimated this card. I went from going to 3 copies to 2 copies, but I feel like you have to play this at 4 for this build. And partially the reason is because you have cards that gain benefits off of attacking twice. So if you have Ancient Dragon, if you were able to attack an opponent's site, they take 6 damage. And if they're in range with a Grapple Shot, you can use that to deal an additional 6 damage. It's really strong. It's actually one of my favorite plays to do, I'm not even going to lie. With Daperyll Vampire, you can race the life gain. Like, if you play this and you absolutely need the life gain for that turn, and if you have mana to play Grapple Shot, this can potentially hit something, strike it first, and then heal you and put you back in the game. It's also really good too because you can attack a minion, gain life, and then use Grapple Shot to essentially strike another minion and then gain double life that turn. Really good. But my favorite thing to do is use Grapple Shot with Grim Reaper. When I play Grim Reaper, most of the time everyone's keeping their minions far away from it, and unless they have a removal spell to deal with it, they're not really going to push their minions forward, which is great because with Grapple Shot, I just force that fight, and getting rid of a minion and getting rid of all their copies when they least expect it is really strong. I took 3 cards out of my opponent's hand with Grim Reaper, and they immediately scooped. So, Grapple Shot, very good. Also, for those of you who don't know, when you strike a minion with Grapple Shot, because what happens is you shoot a projectile. Once it hits a unit, the ally is dragged to that location and strikes it. Strike means that it deals damage. It doesn't receive damage because that's fighting when they both fight. So striking it first is really, really strong. And that's why it's really good with Grim Reaper, because Grim Reaper is very fragile. If it fights a minion, it's going to die. But with Grapple Shot, it essentially makes it so it can kill a minion with its lethal damage, and it won't take any damage to kill it. So, we have Cave In at 3. This card is probably underrated, but I highly recommend playing this. There's another card that works for water sites, but essentially what this card does is it burrows all minions and artifacts occupying a target land site. So, hypothetically speaking, if my opponent has their avatar with a Philosopher Stone and an Aquamarine Core, I can use Cave In to get rid of both of these artifacts. For 4 mana to do that, that's pretty strong. I kid you not, I used this one time to get rid of 3 artifacts and 3 minions at the same time. That's when the game just like completely goes in your favor. If you happen to be in that situation, be happy because Cave In can actually win you the game on that spot if that happens. This is the last spell in the deck. This is Pact with the Devil. And Pact with the Devil is really strong. So you sacrifice the caster or lose half of your life rounded up. And if you do, you draw 3 cards. So the best combo to do with this is when you have Grandmaster Wizard. play Grandmaster Wizard, draw 3 cards. Pact with the Devil, you sacrifice Grandmaster Wizard to draw 3 more cards. So you can essentially draw 6 cards. There's a way to draw 9 cards with this card and Grandmaster Wizard. However, the setting has to be just right. So we're going into our Atlas here. We have the Color Out of Space. This site essentially provides us one of each mana threshold. Or rather, yeah, one of each threshold. And it obviously provides us 1 mana. However, its effect says it doesn't provide mana or threshold if it's not adjacent to the void. This is pretty good to start the game off, because if you just play it with your avatar, obviously there are so many voids around it, so this is going to provide you one of each threshold, and then with the Elementalist you're providing another one of each threshold, so you have 2 of everything with the 1 mana to start off with. It's pretty strong. Now, this card also combos off with Smokestacks of Nog, or Gnog, I don't know how to pronounce it. It says, other nearby sites lose their abilities. So if you play this for your second land, and let's say this is your first land with your avatar, and you play this right on top of it, this actually negates the effects of Color Out of Space. So what that means is that it forcefully makes it so it will always provide mana and provide 1 of each threshold. Pretty good. Neat little combo there. It's also really good if your opponent has other sites that are just really annoying and you need to be able to completely shut down their abilities. So Smokestacks is really strong for that. I also have Mirror Realm. So Mirror Realm, when it comes in play as a copy of any nearby site. And now, these two together are a little tricky. See, the thing is that Mirror Realm determines which site it's going to be before it enters play. So let's say, for instance, I were going to select Smokestacks of Nog as my land or site, and I play it nearby it. What happens? Well, the Mirror Realm will come in play as a copy of Smokestacks. However, since this Smokestacks was in play first, this effect is still active, so it will negate this effect, which is pretty interesting because it still got its effect off. It still came in play as a copy of Smokestacks. It still remains a copy of Smokestacks. However, it just doesn't have its ability. The only relevance to that is that it keeps the threshold. And that's really just the only main important thing with these 2 cards. Of course, if you're playing Mirror Realm without the Smokestacks, it's still really good, because this can come and play as any copy, and you can take very good advantage of whichever site that you're trying to copy. We have the Geistwood. This site says Genesis abilities here are Deathrite abilities. So that combo that I was going over with Grandmaster Wizard, if I cast a Grandmaster Wizard, I will draw 3 cards. And the next time it dies on the Geistwood, I will reactivate the Genesis ability, drawing me 3 cards. So that means if I use Pact with the Devil on Grandmaster Wizard, I sacrifice it due to the cost. I draw 3 from Pact with the Devil, and then since Grandmaster Wizard died on Geistwood, I will draw another 3 cards. So in total, that's 9 cards. It's really good. It's a nice little combo that I figured out. And ever since I figured that combo out, I've been playing it essentially in every deck. So Geistwood's pretty good with all these Genesis abilities. We have Boneyard, another Genesis ability. Each player may summon a minion from their cemetery here. It's a little risky because if your opponent has a good minion, they can summon it to this location. And if it's near your avatar, that means that they will have a better chance of striking it. However, let's say they don't even have a minion in their graveyard. If you're the only person with a minion, then you can summon it to this location. And that's really good. Another combo you can do, let's say your opponent has 9 minions in play, and you're just using this to revive 1 minion. Let's say they bring out their best minion from their graveyard, and now, boom. You bring back Death Dealer, and now Death Dealer wipes out all their minions. It's actually a neat little combo, and I love doing this. Sometimes I'll even have Death Dealer with the Geistwood. So this will come in play, kill all minions. Whenever this dies on the Geistwood, I'll reactivate its ability to killing all other minions afterwards. And then, if I play Boneyard and we both revive our minions there, I really don't care what minion they bring back. If it's a Genesis minion, that's really the only downside because they'll gain value off of its Genesis ability. However, if I play the Death Dealer with the Boneyard, it'll just wipe out all other minions anyways. I guess if my opponent brings back their Death Dealer at the same time, I guess that could be really bad too. Lastly, or for my elite slots, actually nope, I have one more elite after this. I have 2 sinkholes. Sinkhole is a really good land, and this card is very underrated. If you're not playing this card, you need to play it. Point blank. When you sacrifice Sinkhole, you could destroy a nearby site, and this is just crazy. So for starters, when you play it, it's providing 1 mana. You can use that 1 mana to cast your spells, and then you use Sinkhole to blow up your opponent's site, thus creating rubble in both zones. Rubble is not a site controlled by either player, so you can't cast minions on it, and it doesn't provide any mana. You can move minions on it, but the whole point is that you just got rid of your opponent's mana. Yes, you got rid of yours, but if you use the mana before you activate its effect to destroy a site, you didn't lose anything. I kid you not. I had a game where I had 2 sinkholes and a mirror realm, and well, let me just put it blank. These 3 cards won me the game. 3 sites won me the game. And I'm not even kidding you, like it really goes by that fast. Sinkhole is just very underrated. If you're not playing it, you need to play it. Simple. Lastly, for our elite slots, we do have the Primordial Spring. This card I'm trying out, and so far when I've played it, it's been really strong. It's a Genesis ability again. If you control fewer sites than your opponent, you draw 3 sites. With Sinkhole, let's say both players only have 4 sites, and you use the Sinkhole and now both players are at 3 sites. You initiate a move from your opponent because now they feel tempted to want to play another site, so now they control 4 and you still control 3. On your next turn, you can play the Primordial Spring, and well, actually I forgot, this doesn't work that way. It only works if when it comes in play you count the number. It doesn't count the number before it comes in play. But either way, let's say if my opponent did have more sites when this comes in play, I draw 3 sites. That's essentially what you're looking for, and this can put you in the game by drawing more sites. Lastly, the only other sites I have are the dual sites. So I moved up to 3 Lighthouse. I found out that Water Threshold and Air Threshold are very important for this deck, as well as everything else, but those are just the main important ones. Got 2 Ruins, 2 Oasis, 2 Windmill, 2 Aqueduct, and 2 Step. So I actually have 21 sites in this deck, and the extra site was the Primordial Spring. If you feel like you want to cut your numbers down and keep it as tight to 20 as you possibly can, you can remove this. I don't recommend removing the 3rd Lighthouse. I feel like the 3rd Lighthouse has just been crucial. Well, besides that, that is my Elementalist build. I would say that this deck is very strong for the meta. It has a very good job at controlling the board state. It has a wonderful job at drawing cards and drawing the resources you need to win the game. And yeah, having its own win condition besides, you know, damage in the form of the Immortal Throne is just really strong. I highly recommend anyone, if you have these cards, definitely play this deck. Even proxy up the deck and try it out against your friends. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry it's been taking me some time to upload videos. Work has been slammed lately, but I'm going to try to make it an attempt to post weekly. So stay tuned. I will also be doing my deck text for my previous decks just to give you an uploaded new deck list for them. Anyways, stay tuned for the next video. I hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe, and most importantly, have a great day, guys.